last time we spoke about the square and the square root. So we have covered the squares and covered square roots. Let's look at cube. If you have, for example, any number, not an example, just generally x cube, it means you have x 3 times and they all multiply each other. X by x by x gives you x cube. Alright? Now, what this means is that the cube root of x cube is x. So you find the cube root, and the way you write the cube root, it looks like the square root, but you make sure to have the 3 here. The cube root of this x cube would be x, because the cube root of a number is another number. When you put 3 of them together and you multiply them, you get the original number. So if you have x cube, you put these 3 numbers together to get it. So therefore the cube root of x must be one of these numbers written down. Example, suppose you have 2 cube. 2 cube, it means you have 3 numbers. You multiply the same number, must be the same number. You multiply them and you get 2 2s 4, 4 2s 8. So you get 8. Now what this means, coming to the cube root part, is that the cube root of 8 is 3 of the same numbers. Multiply them and they give you 8. It works with 2 times 2 times 2. 2 by 2 is 4, 4 by 2 is 8. So therefore the cube root of 8 is 2, because when you put 2 3 times this number of time and you multiply them, you get 8. You get this answer 8. What about negative 8? What's the cube root of negative 8? When we're doing square roots, you found that we were not able to find the square root of a negative number. Now, can you find the square root of a can you find the cube root of a negative number? Let's try. The cube root of negative 8 must be 3 of the same numbers. When you multiply them out, you get negative 8. So let's try with negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. Let's put them in brackets. Negative 2 by negative 2 by negative 2. We already have them in brackets, so you don't necessarily need to put the multiplication sign here. Alright, so let's multiply the first negative 2's. Negative 2 by negative 2. 2 2's is 4, and a negative by a negative here is a positive, so it's a positive 4 times the third negative 2. 4 times negative 2, a positive times negative, gives you a negative. 4 2's 8. So we had multiplied negative 2, negative 2, and negative 2 to give negative 8, which means that the cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. So yeah, we can find the cube root of a negative number. So it's negative 8. So the cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. So we can see that. Now, what that means is that negative 2 cube is negative 8. So then, cube roots have only one answer. Alright? The square root had 2 answers, but cube root gave one answer. The square root, you cannot find the square root of a negative number, but you can find the cube root of a negative number. And here you have an example. Alright? Now let's try to find the cube and the cube root of a fraction. Suppose you have, for example, 2/3 cube. What this means is 2/3 times 2/3 times 2/3. Now, later on in fractions, we're going to concentrate on the fact that you can add, subtract, and multiply and divide fractions. But just a little touch of it here. When you multiply three fractions, just like when you multiply two fractions, you have top times top. When you multiply three fractions, top number, numerator, times top. So it's going to be 2 times 2 times 2 over denominator down the bottom here, 3 times 3 times 3. So what you really have is 2 cube over 3 cube. So when you have 2 over 3 cube, you can separate them as 2 cube over 3 cube. Alright? 2 cube divided by 3 cube you have here. And that gives you what? 2 2's 4, 4 2's 8, over 3 3's 9, 9 3's 27. So it's 8 divided by 27. That's 2/3 cube is 8 27th. Now, suppose we find the cube root of 8 27th. What this up here suggests is that it is 2/3. 2/3. Alright? Now, what it means is that you can find the cube root of 8 over the cube root of 27. So the cube root of 8 is 2, just like this 2, and the cube root of 27 is 3. So you can also separate them, separate the fractions, and find the roots like this. Now, let's look at one more thing before we finish off. We have looked at square root and cube root, square and cube of one number divided by another. Suppose you want to find, for example, the cube root, or the cube of 8 multiplied by 27. Or, no, not 8 multiplied by 27. Let's say we want 2 times 3 all cube. What we have is 2 by 3, 6 cube, which is 6 6 36, and 36 times 6, that's 6 6 36. Bring down the 6, carry 3, 6 3 is 18, 90 20 21, 216. Good. Suppose we say, just like when we had fraction divide number divide by a number and we separate them, suppose we had 2 cube times 3 cube. Separate them. Would it work? Let's see. 2 cube is 8. 3 cube is 3 3 is 9, 9 3 is 27. What is 8 times 27? 27. 8. Now 8 7 56. Bring down 6, carry 5. 8 2 16. 17 18 19 20 21. So I have 21. So it's the same, 2 16. The thing is, any number you try it with, it will work. Alright? So we can take them out of the bracket and separate them. And it also works with square root, with squares. Alright? Now let's try the cube root of 8 multiplied by 27. Now you can use a calculator to find the cube root. There's a cube root sign on the calculator, but since these will be, if you multiply 8 by 27 and find the cube root, 8 by 27 will give 216, and then you find the cube root of that. You have a cube root sign on most calculators. You have a square root sign on just about all calculators. But here, 8 times 27, and the cube root of that, 8 by 27, as we saw up here, 8 by 27 is 216, this same 216, and a number that multiplies itself 3 times to give you it is 6. So this is suggesting that the cube root of 8 by 27, same as cube root of 216, is 6. But let's try it. Instead of using this big number 216, suppose we separate them and say it is the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 27. What we have is the cube root of 8 is what? You remember what it was? It was 2. 2 times the cube root of 27, 3, because remember the cube root of 8 is 3 numbers together multiplied, you get 8, so it's 2 by 2 by 2. 2 2 4 4 2 is 8, so it's 2. Cube root of 27, 3 3s 9, 9 3s 27. 3 3s multiplied together, you get 27, so it is 3. What is 2 times 3? It is 6. So you can separate these numbers multiplied to give you the cube root. Alright, that will be useful later on when you come to a later topic. So therefore, let's review. The cube of a number is the 3 of the numbers laid out, and then you multiply them, the number times the number times the number. What you get is the cube of that number. The cube root of a number is another number. When you put 3 of them and multiply out all of that, then you get the original number. Alright, so we'll move on to another subtopic later on. So I'll see you then.